Now, the second reason, and this is a really important one, and it's the reason all of this works. Today, I have an anonymous question. It was actually a question sent by email from a client, and I have already responded to that email. But I thought that it would be useful, it may be helpful for others as well. So the question was to do with why we don't go into the negative memory and change all of the different aspects of the negative memory. In other words, go in there and change, the expressions on the faces and what we see, what we feel, what we smell, and all of those aspects, why we don't go in, take a look at those and change every separate aspect. So there are two main reasons that we don't spend any time in the original memory other than sort of dipping your toe in it as if it's a hot bath just to see how hot it is. In other words, just to see if there are any negative emotions there before changing it. The first reason is bearing in mind that thoughts are connections between neurons, and those connections between neurons trigger matching chemicals, and Hebb's rule of cells that fire together wire together, which what's actually happening each time we recall the original memory or even think about it is, number one, as you think of each aspect of the negative memory, any details you think of, that is literally cells connecting in real time. And those connections are triggering matching chemicals along with strengthening those connections. And as you think of aspects of the positive memory, that's also literally cells connecting in real time. And those connections are triggering matching chemicals along with strengthening those connections. So going back to the original memory is like learning a new phone number and then going back to the old one to see if you can still remember it. You wouldn't want to do that, of course. So since cells that fire together wire together, and the chemicals that are produced as a result of those connections each time they fire, you want to make sure that you're firing the connections of the new memory far more than the connections of the old memory. And considering that stress chemicals that are produced when we have negative thoughts or emotions are stronger than feel-good chemicals because they're for survival, you also want to make sure that you're not pumping more stress chemicals into your system than necessary. So those neural connections of each aspect of the negative memory, as you go to check it, you're in real time pumping more stress chemicals into your system. Now, the second reason, and this is a really important one, and it's the reason all of this works, is the difference between the conscious mind and the unconscious part of the brain. So while the conscious mind is only able to process a very small amount of data at a time, the unconscious part of the brain, of course, is able to do a lot more. And it's constantly updating information and memories in the background without our conscious awareness. So as we change a memory, we're not just changing what we're consciously focusing on in that moment. The brain is actually updating other information and data, including other aspects of that particular memory, as well as other memories that are connected to that we can't even recall consciously. And it's doing that automatically. So there's no need to manually focus on and change every aspect of a memory. In fact, there wouldn't be enough time in the world to manually change every aspect of every memory. It would be physically impossible, of course. So as you change a particular memory, so let's say it's a memory of being shouted at, you're going to change it from being shouted at to being hugged and praised. So however that's represented for you, so let's say it's a feeling of being hugged and a gentle, loving, reassuring voice. Now, as you establish that new memory by repetition and focusing on whatever details in that new memory that will amp up those good feelings for you, the unconscious part of your brain is automatically updating the rest of the data without you needing to be consciously aware of it. And as you repeat that new memory, in other words, firing those new neural connections with all the good feelings, so producing more of those feel-good chemicals, those connections start to become established. And the brain continues to update other data that's linked to those particular neural networks. So when you go to sleep that night, as long as you've added strong, good emotions, so feel-good chemicals with a dash of adrenaline, your brain will prioritize that new memory for long-term storage. Now, if you were to go back to the original memory to check if all of it has changed or if there's anything left of the old memory, you'd be manually firing those old neural networks and triggering those matching stress chemicals, interrupting process of establishing the new data. So let's say you go back to that old memory and you're now going to look specifically at the expression on that person's face. So now you notice that their expression is angry, let's say, even though they're hugging you. Now, the unconscious part of the brain just hasn't updated that information yet. And now you've just refired those old neural connections, which interrupts and delays that update. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you're delaying your results. So an analogy would be if you wanted to part your hair in a particular direction. So if I wanted to, for example, I always wear my hair in this parting. If I wanted to brush it the other way and have the parting this side, I would comb my hair in that direction, so training it to grow in that direction. But if I then kept sort of combing it back in the old direction to see if it'll still stay there, it will, because the hair needs to update the direction in which it's growing without being interrupted. So each interruption delays that progress. The challenge is that our experience through the conscious mind, because we can't see those processes, appears to be intangible rather than actual physical processes. So I hope that helps to clarify. Let me know if any of you need any more clarification on that or have any more questions.